Good evening, everyone. My name is Krista Noonan, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer with Modesto City Schools. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our Community Update and Feedback Forum. I'm going to go ahead and get the presentation started so that we can be mindful of everyone's time. So if Dr. Noguchi will be doing the presentation, but first I'd like to go over the purpose of today's presentation, and we're going to be going over what it actually takes in order to reopen our schools. We're also going to provide you with an outline of where we are right now with the school year, and then it's definitely an opportunity to share feedback and questions. I know many of you have taken the distance learning survey that we posted, but there's a link for it as well. So thank you for the feedback that you've provided thus far. But the next slide will actually show you what we want to, for right now, is to actually have you post questions during this live event. So for mobile devices, you're going to look for an icon that looks like a little couple of chat bubbles with a question mark. Or if you're on a computer and laptop, it may be, for example, a purple bar that says ask a question. And you'll just click on that icon and then you'll populate the question. And then myself and Becky Fortuna, we're monitoring the questions as they come through. The next slide. Basically what's going to happen is we're monitoring the questions. We're going to be identifying themes, and I do want you to know that your voice matters. But usually on these events, we have several hundred people who are inputting questions. One community event, I think we had around 800 or 900 questions that came over. So we obviously can't read specific questions, but we are doing our best to address question themes. So I just want you to know that. And we regularly post updates on the Modesto City Schools website at mcsforkids.com, our social media, and then our messages to families. And I do want to say something. I know that many of you are experiencing an increase in the number of calls that you're receiving from the district and or our schools. But I hope that you understand right now, being in the time of the pandemic, we really don't have other alternatives to get a hold of you. So we need to make sure that you're informed. And lastly, just please remember that we're in a rapidly changing environment. I think we all see that with the news every day, and we're doing our best to keep all of our families updated. So feel free, you can start putting in questions in the Q&A, or you can wait until after Dr. Noguchi's portion of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Noguchi, our superintendent.
Thank you, Krista, and welcome everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. I really look forward to hearing from you about your questions, comments, concerns. I'm going to spend the next maybe 7 or 8 minutes going over about 10 slides, but the majority of our hour tonight will be allowing you to have the opportunity to be able to give us some feedback. So central to this presentation today is really providing you some information on how do we go about opening schools? When will we be able to open schools? And hopefully go through some information that you can help better understand some of the criteria and some of the guidelines that are out there for us. First off, on July 17th, the governor made an order, and I actually have it quoted here, and I'm going to read it. If the local health jurisdiction, that means county, has been on the state monitoring list for at least 14 days, the school must conduct distance learning only until their county has been off the monitoring list for at least 14 days. So we've been on the state's monitoring list since June. So currently our county is on that monitoring list. But the governor also recognized that TK, our littlest learners all the way through 6, grade students, it was really important to get them back as soon as we possibly could. So he did put into this order another portion about a waiver, and it says local health officers are allowed to grant a waiver to this above criteria in order for elementary schools to open in-person instruction under specific conditions. Now, some of you might be saying, well, how about secondary? How about our high schools? Unfortunately, there wasn't any provision for our high schools at this time. So right now, we need to get off the state monitoring list in order to be able to open up our high schools. So for the next 3 or 4 slides, I'm going to talk about what we're doing to hopefully get our elementary schools up and running. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about how can we get our county off that list? How do we get off the county or the state watch list? I recognize that Santa Cruz County just got off the state watch list. It was just yesterday, and they anticipate San Diego County getting off the state watch list tomorrow or Friday. What that tells me is we can get off the state watch list. So it is within our power to do that, but we really need to be able to work together to make that happen. So what do we need to do? One, to get off the watch list, we need to have 100 or less positive cases per 100,000 community members for a two-week period. We also need to have our positivity rate to be 8% or lower. And then we also need to look at our ICU beds and our ventilators, ensuring that we have at least 25 to 20% of beds and ventilators available. So with that in mind, the waiver moved that criteria up just a little bit, really made it a little easier for schools to open. It's such that the infection rate has to be 200 cases, not 100, but 200 cases per 100. And we needed to get the county health officer to say, yes, it's okay to open schools, and we approve the waiver. And we also need to work with our labor partners and parent organizations with the opening plan, with this waiver. And we need to have this plan posted on our websites for 2 full weeks so all parents and community members can see what the plans are. So where are we now? Where are we relative to this 200 cases per 100? Currently, Stanislaus County is at 615. So that's nearly 3 times the amount. We also only have 2 beds left in our ICU out of our total of 5 hospitals. At this point, in speaking with the county health officer, we refer to her as Dr. V. She had stated at our superintendent's meeting that at this point she is not approving any waivers, but she has encouraged us to move forward in the process because that process is going to take a couple weeks to be able to get through. So she's encouraging us to get the waiver, move forward. So when we do get to 200 cases per 100, we will be set and ready to be able to move forward. So what does the waiver entail? So for parents to be comfortable with sending their students to school and for students and staff to be safe at school, we need to go through a number of plans and really think through a number of different items. The first one is a detailed plan on how we're cleaning and sanitizing our classrooms and anything that the students come in contact with. Classrooms, restrooms, lunch areas, outside areas. So we need to have a thorough plan that aligns to the CDC guidelines. We also need to have a plan where we keep all of our students in small groups. So our 3rd graders remain just with their 3rd grade cohort. They can't go in with the 4th grade, the 5th grade, and the 6th grade. We need to be able to keep them within their same cohort. So that presents some challenges, but certainly we will overcome that. We also have to take a look at how our kids walking to and from the bathroom to the library to the lunch area, how are they walking in such a way that they remain in their small groups and ensuring that they're social distancing. We need to discuss with our community, our parents, and our staff the requirements around face coverings. We have to ensure that we do have health screenings daily and that we do have the capacity to COVID test our students and our staff. And if a staff member tests positive, we have to have a system in place that we're actually doing and supporting the contact tracing for that particular individual. In addition, we need to have a real clear plan for what will we do as we switch from distance learning to the classroom and from the classroom to distance learning. And obviously, like I talked about earlier, we need to make sure that we talk with our labor partners and parent organizations to be able to get feedback on our plans. What we are doing right now is we are in different individual committees doing this work and pulling that all together so we can get this out to parents and our labor partners to get feedback and input, and then off to county health so they can take a look at that and get that posted up on their website. Currently, based on our data, and I just shared this earlier, Modesto City Schools is not in a position to open up. However, we are working towards our elementary area. I do, I take every opportunity in every meeting that I have to really ask folks for their help, because I do know that we can slow the spread of this infection if we do a couple things, and that is we need to wear our mask anytime that we go outside and social distance. We need to avoid gatherings with individuals who aren't practicing social distancing, and we need to wash our hands. Something that Dr. V had shared with the superintendents a couple weeks ago, as they do contact tracing for all the positive cases, they're seeing that there are outbreaks at workplaces, that workplaces kind of feel like family, and they let their guard down. So I really encourage you, and I encourage everyone in this district office and all the schools to not let their guard down. The folks that you work with are not your family members that you live with, and it's really important to ensure that you wear a mask and you continue to bend that curve, if you will. So that right there speaks to where we are relative to the many, many questions we get on a daily basis about opening schools and where we're at with that and what that looks like. The piece to remember is the criteria for opening your county is different than the criteria for opening elementary schools, and it's different than the criteria for opening our secondary schools. But we will work to first off work to open up the elementary schools in a hybrid fashion. We can't bring them all back at the same time, but we're working to ensure that we have the small groups. So I want to now move on to our first day of school. As you see here, we have a teacher, Miss Stevens, who was quite happy to get online and see her students. We have a couple other students on their first day activities. One from Bayer, which is a young lady in the middle. And I believe Fremont Open Plan is the first day of school picture there. We recognize that our first day of school was challenging at best. It wasn't what we planned for. There were many challenges that we were confronted with. In recognizing that first day of school, which was last Monday at 8:30, we needed to connect 30,000 computers in addition to 4,800 staff computers. So you can imagine that's a lot going into one area, and certainly we found that we had some connectivity issues, and we've been working to resolve some of them. There were some issues that were completely out of our control, and one of those was working with Microsoft. Microsoft is a company, and it actually supports us in our Teams meetings and other applications, but nationwide, they had too many people going into their systems, and they too had some outages and made it to where we weren't able to utilize Microsoft, and specifically our Teams meetings, which our students and our teachers are using. We also had home internet service providers. There were outages with our home internet service providers, and we don't have any control over that. But because everyone in other school districts also started on the same time, there was just this massive amount of activity on the internet and in the wires, and it proved to be problematic. However, we definitely have identified the areas of concern and what we need to do. So beginning tonight, we are going to be shutting down the system to do some critical maintenance and some programming to ensure that we have better service tomorrow and moving forward. So tonight from 7 to 9, we will not have any access as we work to do some system maintenance. And again, Friday from 5 to 6. In addition to some other days over the course of this month, we recognize it's not going to be an easy fix, so it's going to take multiple opportunities to do this system maintenance, but we will work to do this maintenance after hours and on the weekends. We are keeping our eye on working to support, and that's why one of the reasons why we're having this meeting today is to get ideas from you on what supports you need, in addition to internet and communication. We are also ensuring that we have a social emotional supports available for all of our students, all of our staff, parents as well. If you see somebody that is struggling socially, emotionally, we do have a hotline that you can call, and it's listed there. We don't turn anyone away, so we encourage anyone that needs to talk to a counselor to give that number a call. We also have a technology help center, which I'm sure Mr. Sulkin will share later on in this presentation as questions become available. We have the help center Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and due to popular demand, parents have asked for that to be extended to hours on Saturday. We also are going to be offering support on Saturday from 9 to 1. So with that, I know that there's going to be a lot of questions. I have a team here to help us answer the questions. We have Mr. Henderson from Associate Superintendent from Human Resources, Brad Godot, Associate Superintendent for Education Services. We have Russ Sulkin, Chief Information Technology Support, and also Associate Superintendent for Student Support Services, in addition to our communication staff, as I know there's some questions around communication as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Krista to ask for the questions that are coming in.
Great. Okay. And thank you. Attendees have been submitting questions, so we're thankful for that. The first question I have is, what steps is the district taking to help with connectivity speed and reliability of the network? For example, Microsoft Teams has issues.
Mr. Sulkin, can you take this one?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for everybody's patience in understanding this, and we really do appreciate it. One thing that we're doing, and tonight Dr. Noguchi mentioned that we're upgrading some of our core equipment and doing maintenance on them. Specifically, we also have reached out to Microsoft so that as soon as they have any issues, we can know and communicate that out like we did today out to our customers. Picking up the speed, one thing I would encourage you to do at some point, if you're feeling like there's something that we can do to help out with your internet speed, you can call the help number that was on one of the slides, 574-8600, because we've had some families call where we walk them through some tests and come to find out maybe your cable modem has been upgraded in the last 6 or 12 months, and a lot of the providers will do it free of charge. They'll send you out a new modem, and some people have experienced twice the speed than what they were before the upgrade.
Okay, great. The next question we have is, student attendance has been very difficult. I'm upset my child has been marked absent or tardy when it was due to technical difficulties. What are the district and schools doing about this?
Mr. Herbst, can you answer that question?
Yeah, you bet. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody out there taking the time out of their evening to come to this. But to get to the answer to the question, if in fact it's a technology-related issue on why your child did not attend for whatever reason, just please make sure that you contact that school site. Once they're informed, I believe that we would be able to take care of that. I don't know if that was an older problem or something that just crept up, but I would encourage you to call the office and that will get rectified.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I believe this one would be for Mr. Henderson. What is happening with Modesto City Schools staff, like yard duty and supervisors and bus drivers, for example, who usually work directly with students or drive their buses? Have they been laid off?
Thank you, Krista. No, we have not laid off any employees as a result of the pandemic or school closures. We have, changes in working conditions are negotiable items with our bargaining units, and this has represented the most dramatic change in working conditions you can think of. So we have been very engaged with our bargaining units to develop either letters of agreement or memoranda of understanding. And the classification of employees that you mentioned are our classified support staff, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them that we understand that bus operators and campus supervisors aren't able to perform the normal functions of their positions, in that they don't have the direct contact with kids. We're not transporting students on buses currently, but we have negotiated to allow the district to assign alternative duties or to reassign employees to where the work is needed right now in this distance learning environment. A lot of that at the beginning of the year centers around transporting items across town. So we've utilized some bus operators for those services and the buses, as well as contacting students and providing support. Also, the biggest effort in the beginning of the year here is identifying and connecting all students with the learning and in the program with their class online. We have attendance, and so we're tracking down all students, and we need all hands on deck to do that. So we've repurposed some of the staff to do some of those duties. But no, we have not laid off any employees.
Okay, great. We have another question. Are kids forced to show their faces on their video, for example, when they're in classes? Is there do we have a standard on that, or are teachers requiring kids to show their faces?
I'm going to let Mr. Godot answer this one.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Noguchi. So yes, teachers do have the ability to require students to show themselves live through the different platforms that we utilize. One of the key functions that these platforms has is the ability to create a digital background, so to speak, so that the video stream wouldn't necessarily show the family room and it's in all of its glory, right? So how does that look? The teachers need to instruct students how to use that background filter when they're streaming videos. But back to the original question, yes, teachers can require students to show themselves on video during instructional time.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here's another question. Realistically speaking, once we are removed from the county watch list, how long will it take to get kids back on campus?
I think that's a great question, and part of the reason why I want to be proactive in developing the plans for elementary. I want to be able to move quickly once we're off the state watch list. This isn't going to happen overnight. Our numbers aren't just going to go from 600 to 100 in a week's time period. This is more of 5-6 weeks. So we are going to watch, as we watch it, we're going to be able to be prepared to open. So I anticipate once we're off the list, we can pivot to in person very quickly.
Okay, and there's actually a follow-up question on that. So if some parents are comfortable with their children going back to school, why can't we give them the option? Is that because of the requirements with the waiver or lack thereof?
Say that question again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it's kind of a tag along with what we just talked about. If some parents are indeed comfortable with their children going back to school, why can't we give them the option to bring their kids back to school? Does it have to do with the waiver?
Actually, no. Right now, the governor has said that we are not allowed to have any in-person. It's all distance learning. So that's come from the state of California. Now, the state of California has also said that if we can get our numbers down to 200 per 100,000, then we can open in a hybrid fashion, meaning bringing back some of our kids. Perhaps it's an AM, PM, or Tuesday, Thursday. We couldn't bring them all back because we need to ensure that our kids are, we have 6 feet apart and in groups of 10. So, long story short, the governor is not, we don't have that ability to do that yet. Even if parents are comfortable in allowing their kids to come back, we don't have that ability or that opportunity yet.
Okay, got it. So here's a question about grading. Is grading during distance learning going to be the same as in person?
Mr. Godot, can you answer that one?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the key differences between where we were at last spring when we were in shelter in place and distance learning, and that other way that we were doing distance learning, is that yes, now in this new model of distance learning, grading is a key part of the accountability piece and providing feedback to students. So we would anticipate that there would be some traditional, typical grading practices, whether that's homework, any number of different types of assessments, quizzes, tests, etc. But yes, grading student work is fundamental to the instruction and the process that we're involved in now in distance learning.
Okay, great. Here we have a question. My student was not able to log on to his class with his school device, but he had no problem logging in using our personal computer. I heard that many students had success with logging onto their classes with various personal devices, so this seems to be a device issue. Is there anything being done to address this, or can we exchange devices?
Yes, I'm going to ask Mr. Sulkin to discuss the difference between the Chromebooks and then also the other platform that we have. So if you could you share what you?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, the reason why some of you were working correctly, and that would have been last week as we had with your own home computer versus a computer provided by the district, is that we have 2 servers last week that had some congestion issues on Monday and Tuesday that we referred to earlier. And those servers' sole purpose is to provide a secure connection for your computer back to our filtering system. We do have federal requirements, they call it SIPA, that we have to filter each computer for our students. So what was happening is that system was overloaded on Monday and Tuesday of last week, and since then we resolved it. So that's why you would have seen your home computer, which we don't filter, works fine, but your school district computer had issues. So bringing it back, I mean, you can still welcome to do that, but if it was last week, that was the cause of that. There's also, Dr. Noguchi is referring to that we are migrating our district over to 100% Chrome, which is easier for us to manage and maintain remotely, also as a better operating system in terms of effectiveness and efficiency. So there is a large back order of Chromebooks in the nation right now, but we currently have well over 50% of our students on the Chromebooks, and we've had really good success for that. And it's by school site. So if your school site has a Chromebook, that's the standard for it, but we're working to do that migration over the springtime and the wintertime for other schools as we can.
Mr. Sulkin, can you also share, there's another part to that question. If a student had a computer that was not working, how would they go about trading that computer in, if you will? What do they need to do if their computer is not working?
Sure. What they need to do is first they can call our helpline, because I know sometimes transportation can be challenged, just to make sure that we can't solve your issue over the phone. If for some reason, once you do get a hold of us, we will direct you to go to one of our 4 service centers that's throughout the district, as well as the one that we have here at Reno Avenue, which is 1017 Reno Avenue. It's towards the back of the parking lot. So again, you can call our help desk number, 574-8600, or you can also come directly to one of those physical service centers.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Russ. And we actually, this is a tag along to that. A question just came over that have we been having difficulties with the technology call center? Because I actually see several comments that the system has been spinning and it just repeats the options again. And specifically, attendees are mentioning Monday. So I don't know if you can comment on that, if we were having any issues, or if you can comment on the reliability of being able to reach the call center.
Sure, good question. And first, thank you for your patience. We did have some issues at our call center on Monday. Those have since been resolved. And again, last week, we definitely had some call center backlog, as well as some issues with the call center itself. We resolved those technical issues over the weekend, and we did finish up some maintenance on Monday evening, so you shouldn't be experiencing it. We've also put in place a daily protocol where I call it Undercover Boss. We basically call our own hotline anywhere from 4 to 6 times a day to make sure all the menu options are working. Plus, we have a console that we're monitoring the queues. And over the last few days, our average wait time has dropped significantly, as well as time on the calls. We have people on a call line for 15 minutes when we're resolving your problems, and now it's dropped down to 6 to 8 minutes per customer that's called in. So again, thanks for your patience on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think this next question may be for Mr. Herbst or Mr. Godot, but is the homework policy different for special education students than that of their general education counterparts?
You know, I think we'll turn this over to Mr. Herbst.
Yeah, it's not the letter of agreement that we have with the Modesto Teachers Association spells out homework for the sake of practice. And so I'm just guessing, and it's hard to hypothesize without more specifics, but I would say typically the homework that's going to be sent home should have something to do with the IEP goals and objectives that a child's working on, and or maybe prerequisite skills to those goals and objectives. So there is not a different homework policy per se. I definitely could see some of our students with disabilities working on assignments at home, and but no, there is not a separate homework policy for students with disabilities versus that of their general education peers.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have another question. What guarantee do we have that our students won't be penalized by the teachers when they have connectivity issues? For example, my son was kicked out of a classroom because he couldn't sign in with his normal account, so I had him use our iPad and he had to join as a guest, but the teacher then kicked him out and said he wasn't connected correctly. Can you explain some of the options that they have?
It's a really good question, and I'm going to send that over to Brad Godot. It's a good question.
Yeah, great question. So there have been a lot of issues across the district as far as connectivity. We recognize that. We're working through that. Our teachers are having some similar issues themselves. So number one, through this entire process, we need to have empathy. So to the parents' concerns, communication is really key to this process. So the student communicating with the teacher what those connection issues may have been. We're also in servicing and communicating with our teachers about these types of issues as they come forward. And I would just encourage everyone through this process to understand that this is new for our teachers too. So understanding that what we might have expected in a classroom when we're attending a brick and mortar schoolhouse, there are going to be some things that we need to do differently in a digital learning environment. So we do take that seriously, and as those situations arise, and if there is something that comes to the forefront for a student or a parent that doesn't seem to make sense for you as far as, hey, we lost connectivity and now somehow there's a detrimental penalty to my student's grade, then we want to know about that because we want to address those.
Okay, great.
Something I'd like to add to that, just something that I've heard this week when we have kids connecting either with a phone number or as a guest. So when you come onto Teams, you can either have a name displayed, or sometimes it's a phone number, or just saying guest. Now, teachers are trying to navigate the best that they can in this environment, and there is a section where you can have a chat and you can put in comments, and there have been kids that have signed in as a guest or a phone number, and there's no accountability to who that person is, and they're putting things in the chat that it has no relevance to the lesson. So it's very difficult for the teacher to have classroom management, if you will, if they don't know who's in front of them. So I can see a teacher that is very much empathetic to her students or his students, but not allowing another student to come in that they don't know who it is if they had gone through an experience that was very difficult because they don't know how to manage it. And that's part of the learning curve for all of us right now. All of our teachers are first year teachers right now in this environment, and classroom management and how to deal with the different situations that arise, that's in front of them each and every day. So we certainly, I'm going to go back to what Mr. Godot said. If a parent, if a student is penalized for a connectivity issue, we need to know about that, and I would encourage you to obviously call the teacher, call the principal, and get that resolved. But there's a lot more dynamics going into signing in as a guest than one might initially think.
Okay. The next question is really pertinent. What accommodations are being made for working parents? For instance, I am being expected to go to my son's school to pick up textbooks during the middle of a work day. Working parents can't just leave their job in the middle of the day for this. There should be an opportunity outside of traditional hours for these kinds of things. Can we comment on that?
Yes. Mr. Godot, can you comment on that?
Yeah, matter of fact, I want to acknowledge that concern, and that's actually been something that has been communicated to us earlier to this week, and we need to do a better job with that. Let's be transparent. We've had a number of things from textbook distribution to passing out school supplies to tech. And so we recognize that. So we're going to do a better job communicating at the site and district level about what those requirements are. But we need to find ways to get materials to students. And this is going to be a challenge throughout. And so, acknowledging that it is a challenge and trying to minimize the number of times that we need to bring students back to a school site. But again, coming back to that communication piece, if there is absolutely no way that the family can make it happen, I would encourage you, implore you, please reach out to the school site, whether that's the principal or the teacher. Let us know. We have the capacity to, for families that, for example, I'll use an example. When we were distributing some materials that families communicated and said, hey, we can't get to the school, we actually deployed our bus drivers and school staff to go out and deliver materials to families that didn't have the ability to get to the school site. So again, we recognize this is a new environment and there are going to be challenges, and I would just encourage parents to communicate with us and let us know what those are so that we can problem solve together to figure out how to support students and parents through this.
And I do know that technology is beginning to pivot as they hear that concern from parents. So Mr. Sulkin, can you talk about the lengthening of the day and then your Saturday and then the different areas that you have in the city that you have for help centers? Can you share that?
Yes, yeah, definitely. We recognize and are empathetic towards the needs of our parents. So this Saturday is an example. It's this Saturday only, but we're going to look at future Saturdays. I can find staff that are available to work on the weekend. But we do have 4 service centers spread throughout the district that allow us to give you service up to 5:30. We haven't been extended the hours yet. We're working with our staff to change their shifts, but we're looking to have the Reno Avenue location open till 5:30. And we also have 3 others. I'll work with Krista once I get it confirmed on the hours of extension by those other sites and get it out through general communication for you.
Okay, great. So we have a question. When our school district is, or the county, for example, is off of the watch list, will the distance learning or Modesto Virtual Academy still be an option for students? For example, if parents are not comfortable sending their child back when we've reopened schools, are they still going to be able to conduct distance learning?
Mr. Godot, I think that we did address that, and can you talk about how we were looking to resolve some of that?
Yeah, so we are expanding our Modesto Virtual Academy program tremendously over the last month. We have a process in place. If parents or students are interested in Modesto Virtual Academy, they can let the school site know, or they can go to the link on our webpage and click in there. And at this point, it would be a waiting list for that. We are staffing at the level to accommodate all of the requests that we received up through, I want to say the middle or end of July. Was our deadline, but we do have the ability, as students may decide at the end of a trimester or semester to return back to the school site. We may have some vacancies that way, but as we get closer and have a better idea of what the wait lists look like and what the community response to that is, then one of the key word of the week is pivot. So we'll need to take a look at that as we get closer to those benchmark times throughout the school year.
Okay, great. Is there anything the district can do to help with reducing screen time for our students? Maybe paper packets or materials?
So, Mr. Godot, I'll let you speak on this one. I'll start it by saying that we do have, the state had, when the state identified distance learning as a requirement due to school closures, they did outline as part of the budget trailer bill specific instructional minutes that needed to transpire for each grade level. So I do know that there is a requirement per day as identified by Ed Code, but specifically screen time. Mr. Godot, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really need to be conscious is mitigating the exposure of, limiting the number of times that we have to come together to do things. So we are trying to limit that interaction. We are currently not distributing paper packets unless, of course, there was a need for through an IEP or something similar to that where there would be an identified need. We have, and this may be going to the idea of how might my student develop if they're a young scholar, TK 6, needing to develop fine motor skills, learning how to write and form letters. We have sent and are sending instructional materials home for students, lined paper, sheet protectors that can be used as kind of a dry erase board. But for the most part, we are focusing on pushing out the work digitally. Now, to the idea of screen time, that is a concern for us. And as we go through, we need to evaluate that with our teachers. And I think that kind of goes back to the homework piece as well. And providing the instruction and providing the practice without having our students sit in front of a computer for distance learning from 9:15 to 2:30 and then having hours more in front of a computer screen. So again, as these concerns arise, if you believe that your child has an inordinate amount of work outside of the instructional day, then please let us know so that we can address that. We definitely need to be conscious about the amount of time our students are spending sitting in front of a computer screen.
It's very challenging.
Let's see. So here's a question about special needs students. So there's been talk of opening up in-person learning for special needs students soon. What is Modesto City Schools' position on this, and can you elaborate a little on what that would look like?
So I'll start this out and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Herbst around the learning pods. Yes, for the last 3 weeks, we've been really delving in and looking at how we can bring our kids back. We have gotten guidance from Dr. V that we can bring 3 to 4 students back right now, so long as it's outside and it is and kids are distanced for the purpose of assessments. So we're bringing back some of our EL students because there's required testing along with our special ed students. But that's with regard to assessments. We know that the state is working on guidelines for what we're coining as learning pods, if you will. So we are looking at what that will look like, and Mr. Herbst and his team has been working on that for the last couple of weeks. So Mark, can you share what your team has come up with at this point?
Yeah, to learn, just to get back kind of to the question, I do want to say I think all of us would be remiss if we suggest that we think distance learning is the most effective way to educate our kids. I think we want them all back brick and mortar, and I believe that's even exasperated more for our students with disabilities. So to come back on that question, I'll get to learning pods last, is once we can get the numbers under control, as Dr. Noguchi had shared in the beginning with her PowerPoint, I do believe students with disabilities will be one of the groups that we highlight as soon as possible to bring them back. What that would look like, we'd obviously have to follow the terms that were outlined in terms of what we need to do for waiver, but we would basically have to work with our contracted vendor, work with our families, set up a system to where we could actually open backup classes, and that would include re-engaging both of our bargaining units on the classified end and on the Teachers Association end. So, but it's definitely in the works. What Dr. Noguchi is talking about on the learning pods would be bringing back small groups of people. So we are preparing, and I was in a meeting with a couple of directors today to share with Cabinet a plan and proposal about doing exactly that. The issue there will be the prioritization of what kids can come back just based on the limited numbers that we can bring back at one time, but it's definitely something that is a continued discussion in Modesto City Schools and something we look forward to sharing more information about in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, great. Let's see. We have a couple of questions regarding preschoolers. Why are preschoolers being pushed to the side? We have no devices provided, yet we are required to participate in class through video. How is MCS providing support for the younger children? And there's actually another comment that says, I was told preschoolers would be getting devices, but my child still does not have one. And so do you have a timeline of when that would happen? So I'll throw both of those out here.
That's a great question. I actually strongly believe in our littlest learners, as I coin them, and I actually supervise that particular department because I am deeply invested in ensuring that our youngest children have the support they need and quality supports in teaching and learning. Preschool has not been pushed to the side. We actually opened up preschool, I believe, the 2nd of July. We opened 3 separate preschools at 3 different locations, and within 2.5 weeks, all 3 were moved to quarantine as a result of positive interactions, cases. I don't know exactly the specifics, but we had to close them down, and then it was recommended that we do not open them up until which time we got control of this virus. Now, as far as preschools, we do have an order out, and it actually we put the order in last June relative to Chromebooks for our littlest learners. And as you heard Mr. Sulkin say, the whole world is after the Chromebooks, and it's in the queue. Right now, it's kind of like going to the grocery store and finding nothing on the shelf. Well, that's where we find ourselves with computers at this point. We do have the computers ordered. We have provided our paraprofessionals with computers. They did not have computers before this, and our preschool teachers. So we did ensure that they were provided computers so they could get the training they need so they can get up and running as soon as we can get our computers in front of our students. So there's a deep investment in preschool in a variety of different ways, not just technology, but also in leadership. This is the first time Modesto has ever had a high-level leader providing leadership for preschool, and that is Heidi Noon. She's a senior director, which is second level as far as leadership, and she's done some amazing work this year, and will continue to do amazing work as we really retool and reposition preschool to be a very strong program as we move forward in the future.
Okay, great. What is the contingency plan for when the students have returned back to school, but then there's a positive COVID outbreak at that school? How do you plan to also do contact tracing to be able to extend it to their families and other contacts?
Well, that is a $1 million question. Our school system is not set up to be contact tracers. However, in the criteria for opening schools through the waiver process, we're supposed to do contact tracing. That doesn't mean that we can't work to support it. We envision setting up a system so we know who individual teachers have come in contact with to be able to help and support that. So we still need to work through what that looks like for the contact tracing. As far as when we open a school and we get positive cases, when we open our schools, we will have positive cases. We will work with county health in identifying the level at which we need to either close the school or close just a particular grade level, if you will. If we do the planning correctly on the waiver process and we keep individual grade levels within their small learning communities, if you will, let's say 3rd grade in the 3rd grade classroom and there's a positive case there, we can quarantine that 3rd grade classroom for 2 weeks rather than the whole school. However, if we see a positive case in 2nd grade, in kinder and 2nd and in 1st and in multiple classrooms, then we'd have to quarantine the school for 2 weeks. However, I'm not the expert in all of that. That's really public health. So we would work with public health in determining the best course of action given best practices and really what currently is in place now.
Okay, great. This is a question for Mr. Sulkin. So some of the parents have noticed that some of the teachers are having some technical challenges, obviously with learning the new skills of the different platforms. And so this particular parent is asking, do the schools have real-time technical support available to teachers to be able to help them with their virtual classes? And then you may also want to touch upon some of the technical support that's available to families too.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have technicians on some of the high schools or the larger campuses where we have more teachers are actually dedicated to those locations. And then at the elementary schools, we have technicians that rove from different school site to school site throughout the day in order to give them the technical support. And they can always call our help desk if they have more immediate needs than when the tech's visiting. And secondly, just clarification on the tech support for our parents and students. We have service centers at Downey and Gregory. The hours of support are 7:30 to 4:30 or 5 p.m. excuse me, at those locations. Again, that was Downey and Gregory from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily, Monday through Friday. And then we have longer hours at Hanshaw, Enox, and Reno, and those are at 7:30 to 5:30. If for some reason you're a parent that has a challenge getting to there at 5:30, you can always call our help desk, and myself or one of our other managers can arrange to stay here till 6 to give you a hand with any computer issues for your student.
Okay, and then we have a question, I believe for Mr. Herbst. My special needs student had 41 total pages of homework last week and 32 pages today alone. Is that a normal level for homework?
I would say that definitely seems excessive. I would encourage the individual to go back and contact the teacher. I don't know, again, in certain cases, based on the classroom and based on the disability, I don't know if there's a teacher that's behind it just assigning that. So I would suggest at least reaching back out to the teacher for clarification on if it's a homework assignment that's due soon. Maybe there's some miscommunication there on that. But I would definitely follow back up with the teacher, and if not, the site administrator or program manager. But yeah, 41 pages or 36 pages of homework on any given night with 2 days, that seems excessive to me, just hearing that.
Okay, got it. Here's another question. Have you given consideration to pass and fail grades due to the amount of technical difficulty? For example, my student has missed a significant amount of class time due to reloading the computer, then emailing the teacher about the technical difficulties. It sounds like it's a Spanish class. So Spanish is based on participation, and connection issues are evident not only with this student, but with the teacher too because of muffled sound. So how are you monitoring this and handling it?
What I can say is that we are working to improve our network, and so I do anticipate that we are going to have far less issues moving forward. We still have a bit of time with the maintenance that I outlined earlier, so I do recognize this is it's going to be ongoing, but I don't believe it's going to be to the extent that we've had. We are not looking at pass or no pass grades this year. We're doing the regular grading patterns, and that was something that was definitely expressed by parents in the spring and also teachers in the spring. So we need to move forward with our grading. However, if you are finding yourself with continued technical issues, I would talk with the teacher, and if not the teacher, then the principal after you've talked with the teacher, because the teachers and the principals are definitely aware of what's going on with the network at the time. And work with them until which time our network is performing at a higher capacity.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you comment on the outreach that the district is doing regarding how people are emotionally coping through this? So we have some questions that are directed with how their students are feeling, the parents, but also most importantly, I think the teachers is another really critical element to make sure that the teachers are emotionally coping through all this. So can you provide some insight on that?
Absolutely. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Herbst because I know that he is putting together a survey for our students because we want to be able to drill down to their specific needs and then identify areas that we can work to support as we move forward. So, you know, we definitely recognize social emotional health of the adults, not just the teachers, but the parents and the students and the community at large is critical, and it's very important. We do have social emotional lessons that are available for teachers to use within their classes, and Mr. Herbst can talk more about that because he's closer to the work than I am. But we are very cognizant that this is something that we need to pay attention to on a daily basis, and we see that in the interactions that we have with our teachers and our principals, because folks are absolutely completely stressed, and it's really working with folks with compassion and with patience and with grace and recognizing we're living through a world pandemic and we're all in this together, and no one is immune from it. There's no one that can say, oh, it's not affecting me. Every single person in this room today. So There's still work to be done there, not just with city schools, but collectively as a county as well, because this issue is far-reaching. So, Mr. Herbst, I know you work very closely with the mental health aspect. Can you share additional support?
Yeah, you bet. You did a great job, but it really is a multi-pronged approach. I think we all need to and have the pulse of the community, how it affects our families, how it affects our students, how it affects our teachers, and how it affects our community. As Dr. Noguchi said, a wealth of social emotional resources that were provided to teachers. Teachers were encouraged the first couple weeks of school to simply just check in with the kids. And that's going to be ongoing throughout the year in terms of making sure that just at the entry level where we have the most contact with students, that we're aware of potential warning signs, something that could go wrong, and having a solid referral process. B, when it comes to actually targeted services, very, very pleased to say in our district, we are coming back into this school year completely staffed at a level, at least, actually it may even be more, than what we had in terms of social emotional supports last year. So whether that be our family support specialist program, student assistance specialist, mental health clinicians, school counselors, or school psychologists, each one we are working with sites or have worked with sites to develop a quick referral process to make sure that we're very, very responsive in meeting the needs of our students. Finally, and I'll just end on this because I know Krista had mentioned it before, I believe it was in Dr. Noguchi's PowerPoint. Also, we have the hotline, and that hotline has the ability to make quick referrals based on what is said or what information is divulged, and providing students and our families with resources that could be made available. So very, very, very cognizant of the need out there, and believe that we're coming into this school year very well equipped to address it.
Okay, great. I think, thank you, Mr. Herbst and Dr. Noguchi. So I think we just have one question, time for one last question, and then we'll need to summarize this.
Ms. Noonan,
Yes.
Krista?
Mike,
There was reference in the question to employee resources. I do want to mention on our website and staff resources, when we first pushed information out, there's the employee assistance program, and we have made those resources available to our staff. It is something that comes with being a district employee, and they have a variety of resources, print, online, phone numbers to call to assist employees with a wide variety of issues, COVID-related, pandemic, or counseling services, anxiety, all kinds of different resources I think could help any of our staff.
Great. Thank you for adding that. That was really valuable. So we have a question here, and it's actually, I'm combining two questions when I'm asking this. This is regarding bringing kids or students back to school campuses. So for example, one parent asked, is it okay if campuses are asking kids to come back for school pictures, etc. But another one said, if you can bring the students back for an assessment that is needed for the funding for the district, why can't you just bring small groups back for instruction?
So assessments aren't needed for any sort of financial resources. So we're not doing the assessments to ensure that we are funded. We're doing the assessments because that's what we need to do for our students to ensure we're providing the correct resources. The state of California has allowed for assessments, bringing students back for assessments, but the state of California is not allowing us to bring back students for instruction in any way. So that was very clear in the guidelines that were provided. Do we want to? Absolutely. Are we trying to figure out a way around the rules? We've been trying, but we also recognize that we have certain guidelines that we have to abide by, and we also have to make sure that our kids and our staff are safe. So to the extent possible, and when we can, and those guidelines are provided by the state on learning pods, which is the small groups of students that you're referring to, we're going to be on it as quickly as we can. And that's really, this kind of brings this presentation full circle. Going back to, we are working on the different elements and criteria in the waiver for our elementary school. We want to get that to the county and in the queue. So when we do get to 200 cases per 100 that is allowable, then we're going to be able to move forward quickly. And so we do need to get feedback from our community. So we will be asking you for feedback on that waiver process. as we move forward in this next couple weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Noguchi. So if you want to go ahead and advance the slide, this is Krista once again. So I just wanted to thank everyone because we do want to be mindful of your time tonight. And thank you for spending the past hour with us. We have seen the questions that are coming in, and we will definitely try to continue to post updates to our website, social media, and sending out messages to our families. But we really need to work together. I know this is definitely a combined message throughout the county because we all know the importance, but we need to work together to slow the spread of the COVID infection in our community. And we can do that by wearing masks, washing your hands, and keeping your distance. I think that's really important, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think that it's hard right now. People feel like giving up hope, but we are making it, and we are going to be stronger through all of this. So thank you again for tuning in. We will have a recording of this event will be available on our website probably by the end of this week. And we definitely appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cabinet, and thank you very much, community members. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.